There is a quiet revolution that begins the moment you stop offering yourself on demand. When your presence is no longer guaranteed, when your emotions no longer serve as public utilities, a shift begins, not just in others but within you. Carl Jung understood this transformation as part of individuation, the reclaiming of the self from the expectations of the world. To be always accessible is to dilute your essence. It is to live externally, scattered across demands instead of grounded within your own center. Yet, from childhood, many are trained in the art of emotional availability. We are applauded for saying yes, rewarded for being easy to reach, and praised for never making others uncomfortable. But what if discomfort is the doorway? What if withdrawing is not weakness, but wisdom? The truth is simple but difficult. Availability is not the same as love. And unavailability, when it comes from awareness rather than avoidance, is not abandonment. It is alignment. 1. The moment you retreat, the world begins to rattle. People who once relied on your immediate reactions start to feel a tremor they can't quite place. You've become unavailable, and with it you've introduced uncertainty into a previously predictable space. The habit of your presence is broken, and the reactions this provokes are revealing. Most people do not crave your company. They crave the emotional predictability you provide. You respond with kindness when they need comfort. You react when they want to feel powerful. You engage when they want to feel seen. But when you remove that supply, the emotional economy crashes. Suddenly, they're forced to sit with their own unrest. This absence isn't about revenge or drama. It isn't about playing games. It's about clarity. You step back not to hurt others, but to stop hurting yourself. You no longer fill in the blanks for everyone else's emptiness. You no longer act as a balm for wounds that aren't yours. And in doing so, you return. Oh, your rightful place, your own life. Some will accuse you of selfishness. Others will question your loyalty. But these reactions often expose the dependency they've formed on your availability. What they miss is not you. It's the ease of access they once had. And when that door closes, they confront something far more unsettling: their own emotional deficits. Absence is powerful because it demands others confront themselves. Where once they had you as an emotional mirror, now they face silent. CE, and silence is an uncompromising truth-teller. But even more, this shift in presence unveils your own patterns. You begin to recognize how often you gave your time to avoid guilt, how often your kindness was fueled by fear of rejection. Absence gives space not only for others to reflect, it gives you space to remember who you were before the performance began. It is not just a withdrawal from people. It is a withdrawal from personas, and in that space your original self begins to stir. 2. The modern mind equates silence with neglect. We've been conditioned to fill every pause with noise, every space with something to say. But true silence, conscious and deliberate, is not a lack. It is a presence too rich for surface-level interaction. Silence speaks when words have lost their meaning. It protects what explanation cannot. You don't remain silent because you have nothing to say, but because what you carry cannot be reduced to language. You are not being passive. You are being exact. The loudest truths often arrive in the quietest forms. Your silence, when rooted in integrity, unsettles those who rely on emotional chaos to remain in control. The ones who panic in your quiet were never listening to you anyway. They were listening for the parts of themselves they projected onto you. When you fall silent, you remove the echo, and in that stillness their noise becomes unbearable. This is the paradox. The more you reclaim your voice through silence, the more you amplify your presence. Silence is not absence. It is sacred space. It is a declaration that not every reaction deserves a response, and not every interaction is worthy of your energy. In silence, you learn the language of restraint. You realize that peace does not need to announce itself. It simply is. You become harder to read but easier to respect. And those who require access to your constant expression find themselves speaking to a closed gate, not out of cruelty but because you have learned to eat your garden. Silence is also a rebellion against emotional inflation. In a world where noise is confused with meaning, your quiet becomes revolutionary. When you do not rush to defend, explain, or react, you reclaim the lost art of observation, and in that observation you find insight. You learn that much of what demands a reply only seeks validation, not truth. And with this wisdom, you begin to speak only when it adds depth, not noise. 3. Psychic energy is not infinite. Each emotional exchange is a transaction. Every conversation, every message you respond to, every emotional reaction you give away is an investment of your inner currency. The question is, are you investing or are you leaking? Carl Jung saw the psyche as an energy system. When you react impulsively, argue unnecessarily, or explain yourself to those unwilling to understand, you hemorrhage your vitality. You feel tired, not because life is too much, but because you're constantly open for emotional business. You are not a rescue service. You are not a therapist on call. You are not a vending machine for reassurance. Yet you've been conditioned to behave as if you are. You give and give and give until your soul feels withdrawn. But no one sees the deficit but you. Energy spent out of guilt or fear never returns as peace. It returns as resentment. To truly shift this pattern, you must become economically aware of your emotional labor. Ask, does this exchange build me or does it bankrupt me? When you begin conserving your energy, some will notice. They will say you've changed, that you've become cold. But what's actually happened is this. You've stopped offering discounts on your presence. You've remembered that your energy is your own, and it deserves to be spent wisely. And the more you refine this internal economy, the more selective you become with your yes. You no longer agree to engagements that drain you. You no longer confuse availability with loyalty. You stop attending to fires you didn't start. And slowly, what once felt like obligation transforms into discernment. You discover that your time is sacred, your attention is holy, and your peace is priceless. 4. Manipulation thrives on predictability. If they know your buttons, they know how to push them. And most of us have been walking around with exposed wiring, waiting for someone to trigger a reaction we didn't consent to. Every time you justify yourself, you reaffirm someone else's illusion. Every time you explain what doesn't need explaining, you validate their perception over your own. But when you stop reacting, you short-circuit the entire system. This isn't about building walls, it's about knowing your architecture. You don't owe access to anyone who hasn't earned it. And those who depended on your emotional reflexes will find your new presence disorienting. They'll provoke, they'll guilt, they'll accuse. Not because you've become someone else, but because they no longer know how to be who they were around you. Reclaiming your emotional autonomy isn't a declaration of war. It's a peace treaty with yourself. You stop performing, you stop apologizing for your limits, and with that, the performance ends. The strings are cut, the puppet show is over. The irony is this. In becoming unresponsive to manipulation, you become more responsive to truth, because your reactions are no longer outsourced, they are chosen. There is a unique kind of dignity that emerges when you no longer flinch at disapproval. When your self-worth isn't tied to another's validation, you become a sovereign force, and manipulation cannot survive in the presence of sovereignty. Like shadows, it recedes. In the light of clarity, in this new space, you are not above others. You are simply above the game. 5. Not everyone will understand your transformation. Some will miss the version of you that bent, broke, and bled just to maintain connection. They will call this evolution distance. They will call your peace arrogance. But none of their labels can touch your truth. You were not born to be digestible. You were not created to be convenient. And once you stop making yourself smaller to fit someone else's comfort zone, you begin to realize who was truly seeing you and who was merely seeing their reflection in you. To be misunderstood is painful, but it is also proof that you've stopped performing, proof that your truth has become stronger than your need to be liked. You will lose some people, but the ones who remain will no longer love a projection. They will begin to love a person. In this new clarity, you no longer seek validation. You offer presence, and for many that will be too much. Let it be. Better to be whole and misread than fractured and adored. To be misunderstood is not to be lost. It is to be real. And the deeper your truth becomes, the more it disrupts shallow narratives. People who relied on your compliance will now question your integrity, but you owe no explanation for your evolution. Your life is not a courtroom. Your journey does not require a jury. Allow the discomfort of misunderstanding to be your teacher. Let it stretch your boundaries and teach you resilience. Not all will follow you to your wholeness, but those who do will meet you therewith, all eyes unclouded by projection. That is the true circle, rare, quiet, unwavering. 6. Solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the presence of self, the sacred kind, the kind that listens without noise, breathes without rush, and feels without fear. In solitude, you meet the unedited version of yourself. Jung knew that individuation required this withdrawal. The detachment from collective roles, the end of borrowed identities. It's not about being alone in sadness. It's about being alone in fullness. It's a solitude that doesn't isolate, it integrates. Here you begin to see what truly matters. Not who calls, but who respects your silence. Not who seeks you in crisis, but who honors you in calm. The relationships that survive this solitude are the ones rooted in authenticity, not dependency. And most importantly, you find your own voice again. The one you muted to keep others close. The one that speaks not to impress, but to express. And when you speak again, it is no longer noise. It is truth. Measured, clean, sovereign, the solitude becomes a sanctuary, a place where inner dialogue replaces external performance, where depth replaces approval. In this sacred space, you stop reacting to the world's chaos and begin crafting your inner order. You are no longer swept by the tides, you are the shore, and slowly that which once felt like loneliness becomes presence. You discover that your own company is not a punishment, it is a return to a self that was never lost, only buried. 7. After the silence comes the emergence, but you are no longer the same. You do not return to the world as a responder, you return as a creator, no longer dictated by reaction, but moved by intention. You have shed the roles others gave you. You have dissolved the need to prove your worth. Now, your presence is not performance, it is substance, it is rooted, it is enough. The world will still ask for the old version of you. Some will try to pull you back into patterns you've outgrown. Smile entirely. Decline firmly. You do not owe a return to what you've transcended. You begin to build a life that resonates, conversations that nourish, relationships that expand, environments that respect, and above all, an identity that is no longer borrowed but chosen. You are no longer available for emotional crumbs. You are the feast, and in your wholeness you finally understand. Your value was never in your availability, it was in your authenticity all along. To create is to step beyond survival, to move with intention instead of reflex. In your return, you speak less but say more. You show up less often but with more depth. Your boundaries are no longer defenses. They are design. A way of honoring the life you are now consciously shaping. This is the power of withdrawal, not that it ends connection, but that it rewrites it. You don't leave the world behind. You invite it in on your terms through your truth. And the world that meets you there is one you finally recognize as your own. When you stop being available, you stop being consumed. You begin to live on your own terms, by your own rhythms, for your own truth. You are no longer a tool for others' convenience. You become a being of presence, not performance. And while the world may resist this change, while it may criticize or attempt to guilt you back into your old form, you stand firm. Because now you are not just alive, you are sovereign. You are home. The silence you've embraced has not erased you. It has revealed Yatu. And what it has revealed is something unforgettable. Not a helper, not a mirror, not a role, but a whole luminous, unshakable self. This is the change. And it begins the moment you stop being available